Live from the MacGyver Project studios in sunny, warm Wisconsin, it's Nick with the Olympic Legends podcast. Well, technically it's not live as you're listening to this, but it sounds good, so let's leave it in. Thanks for joining me on this first episode of Olympic Legends. My reason for doing this podcast is that I love the Olympics, and I thought it would be fun to talk to athletes who are involved and hear their stories. You'll notice there's no entrance music. There's a lot of great Olympic themes out there, but I don't have the rights to any of them. So just take a moment to sing it in your head. I think that should be allowed. So my guest tonight is Barry Magee, the bronze medalist in the marathon at the 1960 Olympics in Rome. I talked to Barry for almost an hour and had a fantastic time. Sadly, you're not going to be able to hear any of that because I had a technological catastrophe and lost the audio. We were just wrapping up around the 58-minute mark when GarageBand, my recording software, abruptly stopped. The Skype call disconnected and my computer froze. I had heard of similar snafus happening to people where they've lost audio, and I figured it happened to me at some point. I just didn't think it was going to happen on the very first one. But now that I got it out of the way, hopefully it won't happen again. Obviously it's not ideal, but it's a good learning experience. I learned that GarageBand has some limits, and you can't just record indefinitely. But fortunately, Barry was willing to talk to me for a few minutes when I called him back, so you can at least hear him a little bit. And before I play that audio, I'll do a short summary monologue of what we talked about so that you get a sense of our conversation. So Barry is from New Zealand, and he started running when he was 12 years old at a Harrier club, which he said is like an athletic club. He started running because he got a finger injury from playing rugby football. And when he was running initially, he did not have much speed and didn't win many races. It wasn't until he moved to the longer distances that he started to stand out a little bit more. And he worked with a coach named Arthur Lydiard, who at one point was named by Runner's World magazine as the best running coach of all time. So he was a legendary genius running coach who was really ahead of his time. He was very innovative and did a lot of what today we would call sports science, a lot of things that other programs or countries weren't doing, and that helped New Zealand have quite a mark in the 1960s in the running world, disproportional to their population. They won a lot of medals and had a lot of success, mostly thanks to his coaching. And he worked with Barry and had a huge impact on his life. So regarding the Olympic marathon, I asked Barry if he had any expectations going into the race, and he said he always tried to win every race he entered, but realistically he wasn't really expecting to medal. He was hoping for it, but it wasn't like he was a favorite. He wasn't even ranked in the top 20. And I should mention that the marathon in Rome in 1960 is one of the most famous talked about marathons ever, and that's one of the reasons why I reached out to Barry so early on in this project or this podcast. He was one of the people that I thought of to talk to because I've always been interested in this marathon. So a couple of interesting things about this marathon, or unique things. Well, number one, it's in Rome, and so you have all the history there and the running past the Colosseum and the ancient ruins. So that part of it is pretty neat. It's the only marathon that does not start and end in the Olympic Stadium. And it's the only marathon that was run at night. It started at twilight and then ended in total darkness. The last quarter of it was basically in the dark, and so that's pretty amazing. And then the winner of the marathon was Abibi Bikila from Ethiopia, who ran in his bare feet. And that's incredible to me, that not only do you run a marathon in your bare feet, but you win, and you also set a world record at the time. So that really just blows my mind. And it's dark. It's nighttime. So definitely a great story. So that's one of the reasons why I was interested in learning more about this marathon. Barry said that at the start of the race, one of his countrymen noticed Abibi Bikila, who at that time was an unknown, in his bare feet, and made a comment, something like, "Oh, well, we don't have to worry about him." So that was a famous quote, and something that poor guy was not ever able to live down. And then once the race began, it was still light and people could see, but it got progressively darker. And by the 30-kilometer mark, or about 3/4 into the race, it was pitch black. And Barry said there were Roman soldiers with flames lighting the road. That was the only source of light. There were also cobbles periodically in the road, like cobblestone, and you couldn't see where they were. And so periodically you'd run over one with your foot, and it was challenging, and it just further underscores the amazement of Abibi Bikila running in his bare feet over these cobbles. And because it was dark, Barry had no idea where the competitors were or how he did when he finished. He was by himself at the end, and he didn't know who was in front of him, who was behind him. He had no idea how he had done. There's no big clock with the time like there is today. And so he finished the race, which is at the Arch of Constantine, and somebody told him he won the bronze, and so he was elated, just really, really happy to hear that. A few other interesting things that he told me about the race. One was that the reason that it was at night was because the week before, a Swedish cyclist had died in the heat, or during the day, and so it was really hot, and they wanted to not have it be too hot for the marathon, so that's why they had it at night. And he also said that there were no spectators in the crowd, at least for the final part at night, because they were concerned that someone might try to sneak in or do some type of cheating, where you go into the race toward the end. So in that final stretch there, where it was totally dark and it was just the Roman soldiers on the side of the road with torches, quite a scene. He said the medal ceremony was about an hour after the race, right at the Arch of Constantine, so during the night there, and that the medals were presented by Lord Burghley, who was the inspiration for Lord Lindsay in Chariots of Fire, which is one of my favorite movies, so I thought that was cool. I also asked him about Abibi Bikila and if he had gotten to know him at all, and he said that they didn't speak each other's language, so they didn't really talk. But he remembers Abibi Bikila having quite a presence, and he was around 5'10", but Barry said he carried himself like he was 6'10", and he carried himself like a king, which I thought was interesting. And Barry said he still has the bronze medal, obviously, and it's one of two Olympic medals, or there were two Olympics that had medals like this where there's actually a chain that went with the medal, and he's shown it to people, visitors, when they come over, and a lot of people are moved by it. And then as far as what he's doing today, he still actively coaching. I asked him if he was running, and he doesn't run anymore. He stopped when he was 69, but even in his 60s, he was running marathons and winning races. But he's still very involved in the running community. He also travels a lot. Like he said he was invited to the Los Angeles 1984 Olympics, and more recently he's been to the Boston Marathon last year. And he said that there's a Lydiard, his coach, Lydiard School or something in Ohio, maybe a track that's named after him. But he was recently in Ohio for a little ceremony involving Lydiard, and he coaches kids as young as 13 and also people as old as 69. And so he coaches people of all ages, which I think is awesome. It's very cool. I also asked him what are some things that Lydiard really valued, like what were some of his core tenets, and a few things he mentioned. One of them is just about putting in the work, whether it's sun, rain, or hail. You got to put in the work, and it takes sometimes 3 to 10 years in order to get the kind of endurance necessary to be a champion. And he also emphasized distance over speed, saying that speed is natural, but endurance and stamina is improvable. And Barry mentioned Peter Snell, one of his compatriots from New Zealand, another great runner, and he was an 800-meter specialist, and but he ran 100 miles per week. And Barry's said there aren't too many 800-meter runners who do that, but the idea is that you run the long distances, and then your natural speed will take over. And it's interesting because my track coach when I was in high school was the opposite. We pretty much did all speed work. I was a miler and 2-mile runner, and all we did was speed training. And sometimes I remember thinking, wouldn't it be good to run some longer distances instead of just sprinting all the time? But I guess my coach wasn't a disciple of Lydiard, unfortunately. So that's my recap of the conversation I had with Barry. So now I will play the part of our conversation that I was able to save. This is what happened after my computer froze, and then I called him back.
Hello.
Hey, Barry, this is Nick again.
Oh, hi there.
Hey, I have some kind of bad news. Is that I unfortunately lost the audio we just recorded. This is my first time doing this, and I'm not sure exactly what happened, but my recording system hit some kind of endpoint, and then my computer froze, and I couldn't save it. So, unfortunately, our conversation is lost, but I certainly had a good time, so it was not lost on me.
Oh, how about that? Never mind. You may have learned something today.
I did.
It is. And you'll probably be able to remember lots of it anyway.
All right, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, that's that's a bit sad for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's okay. But I guess it's a good lesson for the future to try to figure out a way to not have that happen. But
yes. Yeah, I know. Well, about once a year we have a little team of video people come and visit us from a university, and that's part of their teaching and their learning is to record and to interview and do all sorts of things like that for their particular degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just another day for Barry. Yeah. No, but only too happy to help. In anything like that. It's I still live in a world of sport and a world of athletics and running.
Yeah.
So where some of my teammates that they've just moved on from there, they're just it's not part of their life at all. But I'm still a full-time coach, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of it, and I've just got to fly off to New Zealand Championships and for secondary schools and high schools, in just a few weeks' time. I'm coming up, etc. So I'm all booked to go for that now.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but if you had even just a few minutes where we could get a little bit of audio to include. maybe
well,
we just kind of...
Just do the important stuff.
Yeah, maybe let's hit the 1960 Olympics again. So we talked a little bit about it was a night and you couldn't actually see toward the end of the race. It was pitch black.
Yeah, the last 45 minutes, particularly of the race, was very dark. Mm-hmm. You could see nothing. Yes, it was light when we started at about 5 p.m., but it got dark. Yeah, about 6:15, and and we were running in the dark in the last 6 to 8 miles, probably 8 miles, probably all in the dark. Mm-hmm. And that's unique in history, never been done before. And of course, the only lighting of the last 6 miles down the Appian Way was, I'll call it miles because you're an American. The last 6 miles down the Appian Way was some Italian soldiers had flaming torches on each side of the road, which sort of flickered and gave shadows. Mm-hmm. And so the most difficult part of the last 6 miles was the cobblestones. They were, you couldn't see where you put your feet properly. And I know I had to slow down for each time I hit the cobblestones. But and of course we finished in the dark at the Arch of Constantine, and for me it was, well, I think I've in all my 50 years of racing, and I never had the satisfaction that I felt and experienced when I found out I was third place in the Olympic marathon, this great Olympic marathon in the Rome Olympics. And I was third place for little New Zealand with only 2 million people. And it would achieve a bronze medal in the Olympic marathon. And it was a very, very satisfying feeling at sort of achieving the goal. It's hard to be excited after a marathon because you're so tired. I don't know if you've done one yet, but
I haven't. No, 6 miles is about as far as I've gone.
26 miles, you're pretty stuffed, and so but I mean, what it was a great feeling of satisfaction of mission accomplished, and really. The colour of the medal didn't seem to matter that day. It was just to be in the top 3 and get an Olympic medal was just the most satisfying feeling that an athlete could experience, particularly a runner like me who was, as I call my story, what God can do with a nobody. And when I speak to high schools, I keep it. I really entitle the talk "How Dreams Can Become Reality." And never lose hold of your dreams. And so when I dreamt when I was 13 years of age that somehow I was going to be, I was a winner in athletics somewhere in the world, and I never. But it took 13 years for that to happen. So my dreams, came true beyond my wildest imagination. And Rome was sort of the climax of the marathoning, of all the marathoning that I did, and then we followed that up with some great track performances in the following year with a European tour of being ranked number 2 in the world for 5,000, number 1 in the world for 10,000, and first equal for the marathon, and all from the boy who was absolutely a nobody and a nothing. So I think it helps to inspire and encourage, particularly young people, not to lose sight of their dreams, just to truly go for it. And who knows what anyone might do if they can dream big enough.
Yeah, well, I think what I'll do is I remember enough of what you said, and so I will, I think maybe just kind of summarize it a little bit. But I'm glad to at least have you kind of at least share a little bit so people can hear you. And yeah, I really do appreciate your time. And it was really, really fun talking to you. And like I said, I'll send you a link when I'm done. So I'm sorry we're not going to get the whole.
Yeah, no, only too happy to help, Nicholas. Because I think you've got a lovely surname, Sweeto. I've never met a Sweeto.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we're a unique bunch.
I believe you. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to talk to you.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, same
bye-bye.
to you. All right, bye-bye. So with that, I want to say thank you again to Barry for talking to me and being my first guest. He was great to talk to and very kind, and I had a lot of fun sharing some memories with him. And one thing I forgot to mention that we talked about a little is New Zealand in general, and I said that I've never been there, but I hope to go someday, and that it's my favorite national anthem. I haven't heard all the national anthems in the world, but I know a lot of them from watching soccer. And of the ones I've heard, I think the New Zealand anthem, God Defend New Zealand, is the best. And I'd like to thank you for listening. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out to me at sweeto37@gmail.com or on Twitter at Project MacGyver. I'm going to try to get this on iTunes in the meantime. So thanks again, and good night.